Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast for Black Women Connect Vancouver. Girl, you know it. So I'm the founder of Black Women Connect Vancouver, which started in 2017. And Black Women Connect Vancouver is a collective of women who come to inspire, empower, and leverage our strengths and embrace our diverse experiences. It is a community where we can build meaningful relationships and celebrate the beauty of our Black womanhood. I hope that you enjoy it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, Girl, You Know It. My name is Palesa.
Nataizya.
And I'm Elle.
And today we are joined by a special guest who will ask to introduce themselves in a moment. But today we're going to be talking about fatherhood, which is really, really exciting. I know I have a lot of deep-seated questions that I might ask Bernard, but also, getting to know what a male's perspective around fatherhood is. So Bernard, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming. And can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Right. Yeah, my name is Bernard Mukwavi. My wife is Anne. She works as a nurse. I work as a district minister for the Baptist General Conference in BC. So I oversee churches in our region, working together with pastors. I also serve as the academic dean at Seminaries on Trinity campus. And I have 3 daughters. Natasia is the second. We have the first, Mwaka, and then our last is Njava. And I'm also a grandfather, so I have 2 grandchildren. But growing up, I had planned that other than having our biological children, I was gonna adopt children. So I'm also a father to about 50 children, 50, that we have. And then I've been a father to other young people in Europe, Asia, and in North America.
Wow. Wow, Bernard. I am absolutely floored. That is magnificent. That is absolutely magnificent. Wow. Woo. Okay. So the first question, especially now, because I know that you are such or have such a big capacity to be like a father to a lot of different people. What do you think of the term fatherhood?
Fatherhood is the state of being a father. It's that state of being a father. And so when you think about fatherhood, you are not just talking about fathering a child. You're talking about the active process and state of actually actively involved in your children's lives or your child's life. So that's the state of fatherhood that I'll talk about. And that's what many people do not understand. You can father a child, but that does not mean you're going to have that fatherhood, that you're going to be that father.
Yeah, wow, that's such a great definition. I think that's a piece definitely that people don't fully understand. And I think it's because they don't have the conversations as much. I think with motherhood, it's this innate state of being. You have a child and you're automatically connected to this child, quote unquote. But as we know, that doesn't necessarily happen. And so I think fatherhood is another state of being that we really need to be dissecting, divulging, having more conversations around to set up our men to be good, active participants in fatherhood. And I know that with social media now, more and more men are highlighting the highs and the lows in fatherhood. There's a great Instagram account who does welcome Black to fatherhood. And it's so funny because it shows all the fails and all the joys of fatherhood, but it's nice to get that insight. So thank you so much for that definition. And I would even go so much further. It's the activeness and also sustained sustain effort even when it's hard. And I think that's another thing that some men are not prepared for.
Yes, that's very true. To be a father, there's a mental preparation that needs to happen. In your mind, you have to actually choose to be a father, if you like. For a mother, it's very easy in that, there's a pregnancy that takes place, and there's the 9 months period where there's the bonding that is taking place between the mother and the child. And in this time, if there's not even a marriage, or in some cases there's disconnect, the man is not very connected to that child. So if they are mentally not connected and they're also not physically connected, it becomes very, very difficult for a mother. Then they give birth after about 9 months, on average. So there is that bonding that has taken place during that time, and then the first years of the child, the mother spends with that child. So there's that bonding that takes place. So when you have an absentee father, it would be very difficult for them to really be actively involved as fathers in this sense.
I really like that. And I wonder even, if there's an additional layer where maybe sometimes, fathers are both maybe kind of mentally there and physically there, but they're not emotionally present for their children. Can you speak to that aspect? I would assume that to be fathering, or at least be in the fatherhood practice for so many different people, that you're also having to notice that you're emotionally present for each of those individuals as well, and for their well-being, right? And invested in that is my assumption. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Fatherhood is very complex. So it's good that you identify being physically present, emotionally present, and mentally present. So fatherhood is not as simple as we might make it to be. Fathers are also made in the process. So you don't automatically become a father. There's a mentoring process that needs to take place. So a number of fathers have difficulties because they themselves do not know what it means to be a father, because they were not really properly fathered. And so they are having to learn along the way. And then there's a lot of pressure that comes. There's a pressure to provide. There's a pressure to be a man, to be strong. So there's a lot of pressure. So sometimes the father then thinks that their responsibility is simply to provide financial resources for the children, send them to school, give them food, put a roof over their head. So they, in their mind, they feel, well, I'm doing the best that I can. So, and then being emotionally present might be absent because maybe they didn't even know how to express their emotions growing up. So then they get misunderstood in the process of fathering. Yeah, so they're emotionally absent because they don't know how to be present emotionally, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your relationship with your dad, and what are some of the things you found that you decided to bring into raising us as children, or things that you were like, oh, maybe this is something I don't want to do, or was there anything that brought you to that place, like this is something I admired?
Well, I was born when my father was really a retired man, if you like. I'm more like at the bottom. We were 14 of us, and he had personal connection with all the 14 children. So every one of the 14 children felt special. And so, especially the girls, they thought they were like, dad's favorite. So he was very, very close to them. And he visited every one of them when they were independently living on their own. So he spent time with each one of us. So that's one thing that I admired from my father, was to take time to spend it with all his children individually, not just collectively. And so to spend time with 14 children really takes a lot. Sometimes it would take 2 months just going around and just visiting them. And even when I was younger, he would take me on his walks. So he liked to walk. So I would go walking and we would just be talking. So there was a balance of relationship. He treated me as a son, and yet also sometimes I felt like it was because he was much older than me. It was almost like being with my grandfather. But other times it was like being with my friend when we would joke about some things. But he himself was not very emotionally expressive in terms of maybe giving a hug or saying, I love you. But we were able to know that we were loved. He lost his mom when he was 6 years old, and he grew up with a stepmother that really mistreated him a lot. So, he kind of learned to survive. His own father never protected him from the mistreatment. And but I think one of his siblings, half brothers, used to be protective of him. And so when he decided to have his own children, he wanted to be a different, father, to be there for them. And I picked that from him. Another thing that I picked from him was a sense of unity. He united us, because it's very easy when you have children to be, that they'll be fighting amongst themselves. So he had this sense of bringing us together as one family. And, up to now, we are very united. We know how to deal with our own issues. We know how to talk with each other respectfully. So I picked that from him. And then he was a hard worker. So he worked to provide for all our needs. And another thing was that he wanted us to have an education. And so he gave us this education that, we have all received. And another thing he did was that he really wanted us to excel in life. And I say that because he wanted his children always to rise in every career, occupation where they were. So we were pushed that way to such an extent that as kids, when we would be involved in a fight, he wanted you to win the fight. You don't come back crying. You're gonna go back and win the fight. So that's how I was raised. And, so those are things that I picked up. And probably in raising my own daughters, I probably pushed them that way in that sense. So.
I will agree. I mean, especially Javo and I, when we were teenagers, younger, we would always fight, and the dad's always like, you only have each other, you have to work it out, like apologize like every time. So
yeah, I definitely had some of that too. My mom would not let us go to bed angry, and even if like we would stretch it for like days, my mom would just every day be honest. Every day, it was that was worse than the actual being angry at each other and fighting. It's just like, fine, okay, just stop nagging me, please. So I know, it sounds like you had a very amazing dad for what he did and the values and the principles that he instilled in you. Do you believe that there is such a thing as a good dad, or do you just think that people are just the best dads that they can be?
Oh, well, growing up as a father, because you really grow up as a father as well, you don't really become a perfect dad. You don't become a good dad. It's something that you are always working at, and your children are at different levels, and you relate to them differently as they grow up. So to be a good dad, I don't know, is a relative term, because I don't know if you can really find a good dad in terms of a person coming and saying, I'm a good dad. I think it's other people that will probably recognize some things that they can learn from you as a dad. So growing up for me in my fatherhood, I realized my own inadequacy. And so I had to depend on what I would call on, higher power, if you like. And as a Christian, as a believer in God, I prayed for God to help me to raise the children that he had given my wife and I, because I knew that I would probably mess it up. So I needed help. and that's why some of the names that we gave to our children actually are reflective of my own state of being. So when I named Nataizya and Java, it was reflective of what I was looking for help. So Nataizya was named Nataizya as a way of being grateful to God. It means I am grateful. So I was grateful to God for giving me. At that time, there were now 2 daughters. And so that was that. And then when Java was born, I called her Java. The full name is God Help Me, may you help me. So the full name, the understanding was that God helped me to be a father to raise these girls, because I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I didn't start up saying I'm gonna be a good dad. I started up saying, help me every day. So every day I actually needed help. And then I had a book that I would read on how to be a father, or what to do when a child is sick. And because of living in a complex environment, my father was not always there. He lived somewhere else. And then we're living in post-colonial Africa with colonialism that had destabilized our system of bringing up children. So some of the cultural values had been affected by Westernism that had come within African society. So it was very difficult to know what to keep and what to throw away, in the African culture. So that was that complexity that surrounded it. So in this case, I wanted to do the best that I could, and I knew I had to seek for help. Yeah, so there's a thing as somebody who realizes the inadequacy and they need to depend on somebody greater. They need to learn from other people who are doing a good job that you can look at. So that's how I looked at it. So when I find some fathers who might be failing in being a father, I realized I couldn't judge them that much, because maybe they didn't know better, and so we need to always have room to grow, because we don't know the shoes that somebody's in until we understand where they're coming from.
Wow. Yeah, I think thank you. I like the growing up in fatherhood. That's something I haven't heard. It's like really like shifted the way I look at like parenthood or anything. Like we always have to be humble in where we are and where we're going. And I think that the minute that we say we've learned everything, that's a dangerous place to be. So always being able to be open to learn, to be corrected in like a loving way and a compassionate way. And I think for men, it's hard because they've been socialized to not emotionally feel like the full spectrum of emotion. And so being corrected sometimes feels like a little bit of like a low blow, but it's like, no, it's like in a loving way. So I think that there's that humility. Yeah, I have a question for you. So I am completely estranged from my father. I grew up with 3 sisters, and I was essentially raised. My father was physically present, but not emotionally or mentally present. So I guess my question to you is like, how did you continue to nurture those relationships with Natasia and like your daughters, like throughout adulthood? Just because I know that a lot of people just don't have that relationship with their fathers, and like maybe, in thinking about partnering up and having their own kids, they want to know how to best support their own partner and like continuing their relationship with their like children as they grow up. So like the sustaining of their relationship, how did you continue to do that with your daughters?
Yeah, well, as I said, you grow into fatherhood in the sense that when your children, when you have a baby, you have a different relationship with the baby, and when they become toddlers. So at every stage of their lives, you are playing with them differently, communicating differently, going places differently, and the mistake that fathers would make is probably begin to pull away at some stage, thinking, okay, now the child is independent, they can live on their own. or they probably said the child is too young, I'm gonna come in later, maybe when they're about 15, then I'll be there, and then they miss that all part. So it's really misjudgment, knowing when you are needed. You are needed all the time, but you are needed differently. So the way you relate to a 5-year-old is different from the way you're going to relate to a 15-year-old or a 20-year-old. And also the way you will relate to your children when they are adults. So now, you find out that the relationship begins to shift. Sometimes your children begin to give you advice, and then you are able to listen. So there's a balance there where they give you advice, and then you swallow the pride and take the advice that they give you. They probably want to give you advice on how to handle money, or how to handle your health, or maybe you need to sell a house and live in a smaller place, and what car you drive. Maybe they give you advice on what clothes you wear. And so sometimes, my daughters will say, we want you to stop wearing those Hawaiian shirts. And I love my Hawaiian shirts. So then I had to put them away. Or they say, we don't like this car you bought, go, so things like that would happen. So there's a relationship that you have. So at every stage, so you kind of have to learn how to interact as a father, a child type of thing. So you never really graduate as a father until you die. So you will be needed even when your children are old. Now, when you are estranged, what I would like to say is that as an adult, you would have a role to play in repairing the relationship. So it cannot just be your father who has to repair this relationship. So it's both ways. So what I've discovered is that forgiveness becomes very important. And forgiveness is not denying that something wrong had taken place. It's actually knowing that it did actually take place, and then you make a choice to say, for the good of our relationship, I'm going to take a step to do something about this. So you realize that you have to think about what would be best. What do you need to give up as a daughter or as the son in this way, so that you may gain your father back? And out of the pride that your father might have, he may not take some steps. So it has to begin somewhere, and it's for the good of both of you, and even future grandchildren that come, because they want to have a relationship with their grandfather and you want to build that. So that's the first step that we take. Every one of us will make mistakes. Children make mistakes. Parents make mistakes, and parents have to own their mistakes and apologize. But not everybody might do that. But there's nothing wrong for it to come from one side. You have to begin with a fact, and the fact would be, Dad, I really appreciate you. Thank you for everything that you have done for me and in my life. I really do have a concern that, I don't want to lose you, and I don't want to keep having you at a distance. I want us to work through things. So it is okay to have that conversation and take it in the right direction.
So what happens when people, because I know some friends, or I know people that have done that and they've reached out to that person or parent that has been estranged, and then that parent doesn't reciprocate, or they don't take ownership of the faults that happened, or the fact that they did leave. How do you handle that? Because I know that if you take that first step to reach and someone says, either they pretend that they will show up and they don't, and then a continual disappointment, or they just don't own up to it. How do you even repair something like that if someone doesn't even want to take ownership? Because at what point does it become healthy to even have them around?
Well, if the relationship is not healthy, then, if it's destructive to either yourself or your family, and it is true that you have taken steps, it's okay to still, build your own family where you are and hoping for the best of the father. If because you cannot change a human being. You cannot really change a human being. No one can do that, regardless of what you do to teach them, or you can beat them up, whatever you want to do. You're not going to change what's inside. The heart of man or human being is desperately wicked. No one can really understand what goes in there, and we may not know everything. So we do the best we can, and when it's a toxic situation, and we really must make sure it is a toxic situation and not just kind of come to conclusions without hearing the facts in a case. So you have to be sincere on your part to make sure that really you're not doing this to control the other person. Another thing that has contributed to bad relationships in families is because of what has happened in societies, because of external influences that come and disrupt kind of a culture. So that really does affect relationships. I work with a number of people, and I told you that I'm a father to some people who are not my biological children, and some of them are within that estranged relationship. So they have come to me. Natasia, you might have met some of them. Maybe you didn't know why they would have come. So they come and they would pour their hearts and cry because of what they're having with their parents. And the only thing we can do is listen and give them the same advice to not let anything bad come from them in terms of actions or what they say about their parents. If you can't change them, you can move on, but be respectful in a way.
That's fair. That's fair. I think that there's also attempts that are made time and time again. And I love the idea of there being a time to just stop and sever their relationship if there's no reciprocity, especially, given the fact that sometimes it's taken a very long time for the both of you to even come to that conclusion. So I really like that. And I think, I don't know, but a part of me feels like for folks who want to be mothers, there are resources and groups and, places to go where you can learn and harness these skills. Even the societal pressures around, motherhood are very much like nurturing. They almost stick true to really what it feels like to be a mother, at least as I've heard from people talking about it. But as you're saying, the fatherhood thing, it's a lot more of a decision because you're even physically distanced from the child, and then even that process of childbirth as well. What are some things that as a society we can do to help men or people who want to be in fatherhood get there and actually be able to harness those skills in a practical sense?
As I reflected on this, I think that it's education. Many societies, like governments, throw money at problems. They say, okay, there's this problem, let's put this fund, we are putting in place this money. And that doesn't really help. I see a number of families have been destroyed. What has happened is a disruption of the social fabric, the way it's supposed to be. As we've been industrialized, and now we are being digitized, and there are many things that are happening that are disrupting the social fabric, and also there's this desire to accumulate wealth and do a lot of things, and in the process many people are being hurt. People are having children everywhere without being responsible. So when I talk about the physical absence of a father, it's because the fathers are not taught on to be actually present during the 9 months that the spouse or partner will be pregnant. So the father doesn't necessarily need to be absent during the 9 months. when my wife was expecting, I was present during the 9 months. So during the 9 months, I talked to my children while they were in the mother's womb. So I was actually present every day, listened to them and talked to them, even tried to touch them, even though Natasia used to kick me from the mother's womb sometimes. So we'd do that. So I had those experiences, knowing those. So I was close to them in that way. Now, how did I learn that? I learned that, through reading and attending seminars, because my father never taught me that he did that. So I couldn't pick it up from him. So therefore I had to read a book. And then there were seminars that I would go to, workshops that they would teach us, during my time. So there's the teaching that needs to happen, and also teaching that needs to happen on how to interact with your children when they're born and at toddlers and at different levels. I also attended a conference where they were teaching us on how to interact with your daughters as a man. So I had to learn, how do you do that? So there I was bringing up 3 girls. How do you really bring them up? With the boys, we could be wrestling, fighting at, even when they are 18. So now what do you do when your daughters are of a particular age? And we were being taught on how to compliment them, how to encourage them to achieve in life. So these things are learned, if you know what I mean. So that's what we're missing in society right now. We are not having men being taught to be husbands, first of all, and to be fathers. So this is lacking. But we need to organize such workshops and mentoring.
Are you going to start?
I mean, it's possible. Yeah, I do. With my type of work that I do facilitate this. Other men are actually doing that. So we do have groups of men that meet for breakfast or meet for coffee. And another thing is, they say more is caught than is taught. So you catch it by hanging out with other guys, and it might be on the golf course, or it might be somewhere where you are, and then you just watch and see what they do. When I was in college, I watched the president of our school interact with his children. And so I caught something. So I thought, okay, when I have my own children, that's how I'm going to interact with them. Like every evening before they went to bed, they had a family time, and I loved that. So I picked that from him along the way. So again, you don't think that you know everything, and you shouldn't think that you know everything. Every one of us is always learning. I am even now learning on how to be a father to a daughter who is married and children. How do you do that? Because, how do you do that without getting into their space and yet still be available? So you are always learning. I didn't know that before.
That's awesome. I think you touched on something really important, and that's having good male friends who are also fathers and really supporting each other through that. I think that a lot of times mothers have the opportunity to mother groups and those friendships, and you catch a lot of stuff, but not the same thing happens for fathers. And some fathers, they've never been around a baby, and their friends don't have babies, so they don't get to catch those little good nuggets or tips. So I think really encouraging good male friendships with other fathers is another thing that we can practically do to help support men who are looking to transition into fatherhood. Yeah, definitely. I love that, catching little pieces. I have a question. This is my now. What is your favorite memory of Natasia growing up? I just want to know.
uh, yeah, I don't know if I can point to one, and yeah, um, she was very determined. I think what stands out the memory is the statement she made one time when we were flying from Zambia to London Heathrow. I think we arrived in London Heathrow. She was only maybe about 4 years old, maybe either 3 or 4, maybe 4, I can't remember. So we were there, and so we had come from Africa, and it was cold. And as our siblings were complaining that it was cold, and they said, "Well, you guys, you wanted to come to London, so in other words, this is what you wanted, stop complaining." So then I turned around, and she was so young, and I didn't even know that this was computed within her mind that we are moving from a hot place to a cold place. And so the memory that comes up when I look at the pictures. So.
Nothing.
So, so she doesn't like to complain now a lot. So you gotta suck it up and do what you're supposed to do, I guess.
That is very much Nataizya. The moment you said that, I was like, I see her in all of our team meetings saying that. I see her in all of our hangouts saying that. I see her just in life just saying that, waking up in the morning and being like, you chose to wake up today. Okay, this is what you get. That's just her through and through. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to hold that for the rest of my life. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bernard, for having, for coming on the podcast. It was really wonderful and our pleasure to have you. Do you want to leave maybe the folks who are watching today with one piece of advice, whether it would be, the women that are watching, the men that are watching, other people that are watching as well? What is one thing that you'd like to send them off with?
I think I would like to say that we have a responsibility as individuals and also as families within our society, and to aspire to be good parents and good children, also to aspire to be a good spouse. I would like to say that, there's certain relationships that are toxic out there that actually everyone can get involved in, including the fathers. They can get involved in friendships with other guys that are toxic in terms of teaching wrong things to them, because these guys that they may be hanging out with may not know better, or they may actually be saying things that are harmful. And then you pick up, and that's how you begin to treat your children or your wife. So it's very good to be discerning. At the same time, also as children, it's good to be discerning, because some people might come from backgrounds that are very toxic and broken, and then you think that that's how every family is supposed to be. Because I've come across some children that come from very good families, and they kind of regret that their families were good. They wish they could have been like, because these ones seem to be like, oh man, this is so exciting, you went through this and you did that. I couldn't even answer my father back. You were fighting with your dad, and they kind of begin to desire such experiences. So we need to look at life and know what is good and what is not good in relationships. And in the world where we live now, people go to the media, so they watch movies, they watch something in the movies, they think that's how a perfect marriage, fatherhood, or relationship is supposed to be. And we don't know that these people are actually just acting. They're acting. And that's why you see a lot of marriages breaking up and all that, because that is all based on a lie. So for me, my advice is that be grounded. You have to be grounded in something. And in my case, what grounds me is my faith. And I know there are some people within the Christian faith that have also messed up their lives and their families. But your life shouldn't be patterned after other people. You have to really have a connection your spirituality that grounds you as an individual and that causes you to make a difference in the world around you.
I absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Bernard, for that little, wholesome nugget of wisdom. And it was so lovely to see you folks. We'll be right back after this. Hi. Okay, welcome back, everyone. That was lovely. First of all, Nataizya, your dad is awesome. He's so cute. He's so proper. He's definitely an African dad. So proper. I even like the way he says your name, Nataizya, because now I can actually pronounce your name. All the time, I'm like, Nataizya.
I know, I don't say it right myself. I was like, I wish I had that accent, because I was like, there's a way you say my name that just sounds so good. Yeah.
I love it. So what were your takeaways?
Oof, there are so many takeaways. I, again, really appreciate the growing up in fatherhood. I that completely shifted my mindset, because that can be applied to growing up in motherhood and really recognizing that it's an evolving, iterative process. And also it's based on a relationship with a person who's there, has an agency. They're their own entity, right? So it's not like an inanimate object. You have to really renegotiate. That's a word coming up again, negotiate. You have to negotiate these relationships as you move along them, especially as time goes. And there's that history, there's that shared bond of yes, you're my parent and I have to respect you, but I'm also growing into my own person. So how do we renegotiate our relationship? And I really appreciate him being open and being it's not going to be the same. So I have to also adapt. But woof, just that. Wow. There's so many, but that was it. That was it for me.
Yeah. And I think when he said that, it actually clicked with me. I was like, this is true. Even because we all have different personalities in our family, especially my sisters and I, but we're similar too. But I can definitely see how he treated us differently, and not in a bad way, but adapted to our personalities. And it wasn't just that you're all going to be treated the same and each punishment is the same, because we all react differently. And so yeah, that's something too that I was like, oh yeah, that's true. But I agree. I think him also transitioning into being a grandfather and then watching his kids get married and stuff, I see him also learning to be okay, how does this work? And being a grandparent, I feel changed his whole life. I don't feel there's if there was awards or anything he could go get medals for, he would be trying to get that. They love being grandparents, and it's actually so cute to see their relationship, especially with my niece. They're extremely close, and so it's kind of cool to see that transition of us, but then also with my niece and how close they are.
I love that. I know my parents will be out here. If they ever watch this, they'll be like, you see, it's our lifeline. Give us grandchildren.
It's one motherhood episode.
Yeah, watch the motherhood episode. Also, do what Nataizya's dad's doing, or Nataizya's dad is doing. Go and give it to a lot of other people. There's heaps of folks out there who be looking for you to be stepping into that presence. That for me is the part that really stood out for me, and the complexity that he was also mentioning about, when you're a father, you have to be making a commitment. It's a decision to be there because of how removed one is from, the body where this creation is happening as well. And obviously not to say that, there's always that instant connection and stuff like that, because we know that there's also relationships that happen. I watched the motherhood episode, but I really, really love that, and the nuance, because for me, very much stood out for me, because my dad is physically there and he's kind of maybe mentally there, but he's not really emotionally there. And, the attention that he provides is not the attention that I want, especially as I'm growing. And so that was even a really good piece. You also have to take accountability as a parent to change the way that you are with your children as they grow up as well. You can't forever be treating them like they're 5 years old and you're like, you got McDonald's money? Yes, I've got McDonald's money. Okay. And I've got the money that took you to that Airbnb trip. Don't blame me. I love y'all. I love you, Mom. I'm just playing, but low-key, I'm not. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It's been another episode of Hey Girl, You Know It. I think we need to do a soundbite or something, but you can find us on Instagram at...
I'll tweet.
What's that?
all streaming sites? Is that what you're gonna say? Because you look like you had like a blank. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm trying to remember how it goes in the Instagram. Is it the underscore or is it a dot?
A dot.
Oh, girl dot.
Dot.
You do it. Yeah. Boom.
Oh, like period, girl.
Girl, period on period poo. Okay, period power. Thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. And you can listen to us on all streaming services. This is Spotify, Anchor, all of the good ones. And if you can't find us there, send us a DM and we'll try to get ourselves on there to make it as easy for you to enjoy. But subscribe to the YouTube. Don't play with us. Bye.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It's always amazing to get an opportunity to chat with these lovely ladies. So if you're looking to follow us off of the podcast and you're looking to catch up with some of the content that we have, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube, all at Black Women Connect Vancouver. And we also have a website for you at blackwomenconnectvancouver.com, which is where you can sign up for our mailing list and our newsletter so you can keep updated with our growth and all of the other events that we have planned for you. Catch you later. Bye.